AI is a tool, and AI shouldn't be looked at as a replacement as much as it is a partner. So you can still humanize content and be thinking about all these things and let AI help you. Maybe you figure all this out and you write a blog or you write something for social and you give it to AI and you say something like, "Okay, I'm trying to write this in a way that when it comes to this element from my audience that they will believe this or it will generate an emotional reaction or it won't do this. And do you think this copy does that?" And AI may be able to turn around and go, "Well, I think you left this out." So there's ways you can incorporate AI into the process. But the other thing to remember is people are already picking up on AI generated content. And I can't tell you how many times to this day I still see blogs written that open up with the phrase "in an ever-changing world." Well, then it's automatic. AI wrote that.
Right.
We
Yeah.
already know,
There's certain
right?
phrases.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you're enjoying the show, hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. You'll get the latest on marketing, AI, and how to grow your business. It only takes 2 seconds and really helps the show grow. So please hit subscribe and then continue listening. Scott, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here. You run a marketing agency about humanizing marketing and content. What is it that excites you about marketing? What do you love about it?
One of the things I really like about marketing is, nowadays it's another way that we are able to communicate with others. And I feel like that's both something that's become an advantage in marketing and a disadvantage because when we were, depending on how long you've been in marketing, there was a time where marketing was not really so much like communication from a two-way standpoint. It was more of a one-way. We broadcasted out to a captive audience and everybody paid attention and we just hope for the best. Now it's more interactive, it's more humanized, it's more conversational, and the people that we're talking to are demanding more from us. So I like what really the audience and consumer side of marketing has forced marketers to do, which is to talk more like people, use content as a means to connect with people on a deeper manner. But it sometimes isn't always easy for marketers who'd been doing it a certain way to make that change. But once you're there, it really makes a difference.
I think that's cool. It's something that um, I think is more important today is having a dialogue or having a conversation rather than just this is who we are and this is what we do in marketing or in a business, but to really think about like how are we engaging people? How are we drawing them into a conversation? Are we asking questions? Are we, thinking about what they want and need, or are we just kind of going out and publishing stuff randomly?
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point because the question aspect is huge right now. But what's kind of interesting about that is we're used to if we're already kind of thinking of our audience first, maybe we've asked some good questions about them. But what happens, I think, a lot of times in content marketing is we have this tendency to start with the creation side, and maybe some of those questions are coming in as we're developing it, but we're not asking ourselves enough question before we start making the content. What we really need to start doing more so as marketers is having a little more self-awareness and being able to say, okay, why am I about to do this? Is it more for me? Is it more for them? Am I doing it this way because the company's trying to check boxes on a spreadsheet? Or am I doing this because I know my audience needs this and this is going to provide them with what they need. And then we need to start asking deeper questions about that audience. Maybe it's something like, okay, we're about to write this copy, or we're about to write this blog, or we're about to say something in this content, and we're going to say it like this. But why are we saying it like this? Is it because we've all kind of decided this is the way we talk? In our industry, it's like marketing speak.
Right.
And then we don't stop and realize, okay, well, if that's true, how many times has our audience heard these words before or heard things phrased this way before? If they've heard it a lot, maybe by the time we say it in this piece of content, it's not going to connect with them anymore because they're numb to it. It doesn't mean anything. So if we start asking some questions about their experience, especially their experience with content and bad experience content, it can help us maybe fine tune what we're doing ahead of time so we're not learning some hard lessons by the time we create the content and publish it wherever we're publishing it.
No, I think that's a good point. And it reminds me of the concept of pattern interrupt, of if everybody's doing the same thing, like you're not going to stand out. It'll just get lost in the masses, like you said. So I think especially in the age of AI and in this age of, information overload, really, it's just more important than ever to stand out and to really, like you mentioned, take that time to sit and go, how are we going to stand out? What are our competitors doing? What's the messaging that's out there for these products or services? And then how can we be different? And thinking about the consumer in that way too, I think is really important.
Yeah, and we can ask ourselves, what are our competitors not doing? You
Of,
know,
of course. Yeah. Yeah.
if we can probably tell when they're in autopilot mode and they're doing the same thing over and over and again, and we're like, okay, how can we break away from what they're doing? Because maybe they're doing the same stuff everybody else is doing, or maybe they're number one in the industry and they're on cruise control. They don't think they need to change,
Right.
even though their audience is out there saying, could we please have something different to talk to us? But they don't
Yeah.
care because they're on top and they're on autopilot. But that's where you can be a disruptor. You can come
Right.
in and say, okay, we're going to change the game here. And I've helped companies do that. I had someone tell me the other day that they um, were starting to notice that the competition was noticing what they were doing after I was working with them on LinkedIn. And they actually, I guess they have like kind of a fun little rivalry. So they talk to each other. And
Right.
they literally said, we love what you guys have started to do, and we're going to do that.
Mm,
And I was like, well, don't worry about that because by this time you're already building some trust that even if they start doing it, there's going to be people you now have a relationship with that they're not going to be able to pull away. So that's sometimes what you have to do to really be able to gain even market share is just be willing to say, okay, we're going to do something different. And that really benefits everybody, both the company and the people you're trying to serve, because they're saying, finally, out of this whole group of people, these people are actually doing something different and we're paying attention to them.
yeah, and I think it's cool because if businesses start to do that and start to create like a different identity or a different brand, a uniqueness, and they building that relationship, it's also quite difficult for people to copy that because it's, built around their personality or their business or their branding, or like it's very personalized and very authentic to that business or that brand. So yeah, it makes it harder in a lot of ways for people to copy than just, oh, we have this service and we have this product and here are the features and benefits that anybody could really provide. It's like, what's that edge of difference?
Well, and something that I've seen a lot of thought leaders talk about when it comes to content is, find ways to take a unique stand in your industry as part of your content, which sounds intimidating, especially if you're kind of overthinking branding in a way where, you might feel like that veers too far off of that. But like you said, that's where you can at least show some differentiation. And by the way, it's okay if somebody disagrees. If anything, that's going to create a conversation. If you take a unique stand about something that's happening maybe in the world that relates to your industry and you're saying this is what we think, or maybe it's an approach to the solution, and you're doing it in a way that like you're talking with the consumer about something that maybe is on their mind and it's not just related to you have the problem and we can fix it because we're the best, because
Mhm.
that's the kind of stuff that they see all the time.
Exactly. No, I think that's really cool. And so, how, like, what are some ways that brands or businesses can shift from just producing that generic content to actually communicating with their audience?
Well, I think the first thing is just a frame of mind change, right? So I've often used the TV series Severance as an example of this. If you've ever seen Severance on Apple,
I
it's this
haven't, but
show where these people work on a floor of this company and have this implant in their head. And what it does is it literally separates our memories from work and home. So when we leave work, it triggers and we forget everything we did at work. We don't even know who that person is that works at the company. And then when we enter work every day, we forget everything we just did at home. We're back in that work mindset. So it's like two different versions of yourself living in two different places. None knows what the other is doing. And marketers kind of live in this sometimes because we are fully capable of creating content in our marketing heads when we're at work that when we get home we would never engage with as a consumer. You
right.
know, we'll create something at work and then we'll see something just like we created and we delete it, we ignore it, we don't engage with it because as a consumer we're like, well, that doesn't work. But the problem is we don't spend enough time thinking about that consumer element in our content strategy, right? So, taking time to remember we're also consumers, talking to other people in our organization that have public facing interactions. Maybe it's customer service, maybe it's sales, and maybe you just, put something in front of somebody and go, hey, if you were a consumer, if you were in our audience and you saw this, what would you think? Would this do anything for you? Would you think it was a trap, to sell you something? Would it speak to you? There's all kinds of ways internally that we can change the way we think just by getting to know our audience better and remembering their experience. And then we have all those tools today, like we're doing right now, where we can actually have conversations with our consumers on a video platform like this, or even through social media and ask simple questions and learn a lot of things from our consumers that might help, determine what type of content we create next, and it's going to resonate with them on a different level. So now that they're actively involved in the process, it's not just about us, our marketing goals, and our company
Right.
approach to content. They're part of the process now, and that goes a long way.
I think that's a really cool point, and it's kind of like the way I like to think about marketing is like a relationship with a friend. Like, you're not just gonna come into a friendship or when you meet someone and blast them with all of this information about who you are and what you do. Like, it's really a good relationship, or a healthy relationship is one where it's like back and forth, and it's like you're asking questions about the person and they respond and they ask questions about you. And I think to think of marketing and the marketing process in that way of, asking the questions like you said and including the customer in the marketing process can really help, and even provide content ideas, whether that's, through reviews or Reddit forums or what have you, getting those kind of firsthand customer reviews and customer feedback to then base your marketing off of and going, oh, is our product or service actually solving their problem? Are we actually delivering, what we say we're delivering? Or is it kind of just all hype and flashy words?
Yeah, there's a an ad agency that um, is has always been putting out some pretty good thought leadership content over the years, and they're called Brafton. And Brafton a few years ago declared that our current marketing era is called the relationship era. And one of the reasons why they wanted to point that out is kind of what we were talking about earlier, that the days of broadcasting one way and hoping for great things is over. It is now about building that relationship with the other side. And as we all know, there's not really a whole lot of relationships we can build when one side is doing all the talking, right? And what's interesting is if we really start to think about content being a form of communication, because it really is. I mean, we are developing a way to communicate, get the message to our consumer. It's just content is the way we're doing it. And if we think about that, it goes a long way. And if we look at communication theory, which I've studied a lot to help people humanize their content this way, the literal definition of one-way communication means that the only thing you're trying to do is say it, and it just gets to somebody. I had a professor when I was getting my while getting my second master's in this that said it's like taking a ball in the classroom and throwing it at somebody and it just hits them. And that's
Right.
it. They don't catch it, they don't look at it, they don't throw it back. It just hits them. And when you're talking about one-way communication, that's the goal. I mean, it's
Hmm.
like throw, hit, good job. That's all we
Right.
wanted to do.
Check
So
that box.
Brafton is saying, yeah, we need to be doing more than that. So now it's about
Hmm.
that two-way communication where both people are equally involved and are both exchanging messages and building something together. So if we
Hmm.
start thinking about content as a form of communication, that can really go a long way to kind of changing how we approach um, the whole process of developing it, and how that's going to meet the goals for both.
Right, right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And then in terms of, I guess, shifting with AI coming into obviously the marketing process, what do you see as having like an impact? How does AI have that impact on marketing? And can brands still keep like a humanized content and a humanized marketing process while also using AI?
Sure, because you know, I think about that interview Jeff Bezos did a while back where he said, people always ask me, what do I see changing in the next 10 years? Nobody ever asked me, What do I not see changing in the next 10 years? And the point was, I don't ever see somebody 10 years from now saying, okay, I'm okay if I don't get it fast. I don't get my stuff in the mail fast. They're never going to get there, right?
Right.
And I think as people, and we've seen this time and again in so many instances, I don't think people are ever going to go, okay, yeah, now I'm totally interested in how AI is doing this stuff for brands. I'm no longer interested in that human communication or that human connection. They're always going to want it. And the challenge is the reason why consumers are wanting brands to act more human is because they know businesses, they know they have to make money and they're okay with that. We all get that. But then there's also all the tactics they use. And there's a fine line between the consumer understanding the company has to make money, but they're willing to help me along the way. And that's what comes first versus they're going to use these tactics to make money no matter what. And they don't care about what my experience is. And so consumers are already walking around or skimming around and looking for solutions with their defenses up because of clickbait, because of gated content, because of misleading things to try to trap somebody, pop-up videos, and all these things. And AI is going to become part of that.
Right.
They're going to be making judgments. Is this AI or is this human? Or, it may not even come down to that. It may be, are they doing this to fool me? Or are they doing this for other reasons? Or they're going to be looking for those things to be able to tell because they don't want the idea, they don't want to think the brand is doing this because they're trying to fool them, or this was just a fast way to make content because they don't want to do the work to build the relationship. It's all about
Right.
getting content out the door. So, really, as with anything, AI is a tool, and AI shouldn't be you know, looked at as a replacement as much as it is a partner. So you can still humanize content and be thinking about all these things and let AI help you. Maybe you figure all this out and you write a blog or you write something for social and you give it to AI and you say something like, "Okay, I'm trying to write this in a way that when it comes to this element from my audience that they will believe this or it will generate an emotional reaction or it won't do this. And do you think this copy does that?" And AI may be able to turn around and go, "Well, I think you left this out." So there's ways you can incorporate AI into the process. But the other thing to remember is people are already picking up on AI generated content. And you were talking earlier about how if people start doing the same thing, it just floods the marketplace with more stuff that looks the same. I
Yep.
mean, I can't tell you how many times to this day I still see blogs written that open up with the phrase in an ever-changing world. Well, then it's automatic. AI wrote that.
Right.
We
Yeah.
already know,
There's certain
right?
phrases.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and when companies don't have the self-awareness to realize they've become so obsessed they're forgetting about the audience experience, they forget that their competition is likely using AI the same way, trying the same things. And if everybody's using it the same way and there's no parameters, then we're really just adding to the clutter that's already out there. And our poor consumers are having to deal with yet more of the same
Mm.
thing.
No, I think that's a really good point, and it's almost like I can imagine as a consumer, it can almost feel a bit insulting, like, "Oh, you didn't take the time to put the effort in to really write me good quality content." Like you said, like, they're just trying to get content out the door, and so,
Hmm.
in a sense, like, it kind of creates a lot of opportunity for the people who do take the time to think about their audience and do take the time to connect and write, different copy or different content that still may have been generated with the help of AI or been reviewed by AI or have idea generation by AI, but it's having that human lens put on it where it's like we've thought about your pain points and we've thought about you as a customer and this is what we think you would need. And then kind of like you said, using AI as a tool or kind of almost like a magnifying glass to magnify what's already there rather than expecting the AI to just do everything automatically kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'd like to think again when we think about what we want when we're consumers, we would want brands that we're engaging with and seeking help from to respect us in the same way. So I feel like,
Exactly.
marketers can really maybe start to think about their approach in a very do unto others type way, you know, and because it's true. I mean, when we're on that side of it. especially as marketers, right? Because we already know what half those games are. And it's
Hmm.
like we're willing to play the game, but when we're on this side of the game, we're like, oh, we're not going to fall for this.
Like, I see what you're
And
doing.
yeah, I can
Yeah.
totally see what you're doing. But the thing is, even though those consumers may not be in marketing, they've been through this stuff so many times,
Yeah,
they know it when they
they
see it,
know.
and that's what we have to be mindful of.
And I think that's what a lot of marketers or business owners maybe don't fully understand or grok is that consumers are getting smarter like all the time. They start to see all of the different marketing hacks, all of the different, different like words and copy and angles and strategies that people play. And so as marketers get better, like so does the consumer. And so it's this ever changing process of really like rather than trying to outsmart the customer, it's just can we connect with them instead? Like, why are we trying to outsmart them? Why are we trying to fool them? Why not just put the effort in and do it right the first time and connect with our customers?
Well, the other thing is why haven't we stopped to think a little more about after writing things in a marketing way, let's just say from a copy standpoint, why we think it's going to work wonders for us after all these years of writing copy in a marketing way. It's interesting. When I was presenting at a conference just recently, and I love getting to this part of the presentation where I show this image of a girl that's working at a clothing store. And I was like, okay, so imagine you're walking into this clothing store, and maybe you're there to buy a new coat, right? And the this girl that works there walks up to you. She knows you're trying to buy the coat, and she walks up to you and she says, "Hi, our winter collection is crafted with high performance fabrics to ensure maximum warmth and durability in extreme weather conditions. Would you like to explore our latest offerings?" We would probably look at them and go, are you
What?
all right? Are you
Yeah.
having are you having a stroke? What's
A
going on?
seizure? Yeah.
And and so the marketer might go, well, we're not going to talk to them that way face to face, and that's the point. If
Right.
we had the self-awareness when we sit down to make content and write content, that, why don't we stop a little more and have that same respect and think, okay, if I write an email that looks like that, it's going to look like all the other marketing emails, so why am I not taking more of an effort when I write social media copy or when I write an email to sound more like a person who's reaching out to help somebody versus a generic marketing thing written just like that, that's going to be just the 9,000th thing to land in their inbox that
Mhm.
reads like a commercial. I mean, you literally could take copy like that and hand it to a guy that does voiceover for infomercials, and he'll know exactly how to read that. And what's interesting about that is people might very well read that copy with that voiceover from infomercials in their heads because they've seen so many of
Right.
them. And there is neuroscience that proves that when there's that level of familiarity and they see, things written in a certain way, the brain might be reading it with that voice in their head. And I would like to think you don't want, somebody from an infomercial going, "Are you tired of doing this? Well, to contact us today." You don't want it to read like that. You want it to
Right.
sound more like somebody who's trying to help you out. So that goes a long
Right.
way, just being willing to change the way we think about how we're communicating.
And I think even if brands don't fully get even all the punctuation or the grammar right, like if they get the core message of like, "Hey, like, how's it going?" Like, kind of more that conversational tone, even just using more you words instead of we. Like, "We do this, we offer this." It's like,
Hmm.
"Oh, like, have you ever struggled with this?" Or like, talking more like to them as an individual person. Like just these little shifts, I think it doesn't have to be like perfect, but if you're aiming to connect and you're thinking about your customer, like that goes such a long way to just, yeah, building that connection.
Absolutely. Well, I think that goes back to things that you've heard Donald Miller and many others talk about when they say, you need to craft the stuff and make sure that you're positioning your customer or your prospect or your client or your audience as the hero of the story
Mhm.
and not you. And sometimes that is as simple as when you write something to somebody, you don't lead with how great you are first.
Right.
You know, it's not like you have to sell them on you first. First, demonstrate you understand them and at least
Yeah.
do more to give them the impression this is a legitimate reach out or an attempt to help you and not
Mhm.
just automatically tell you why we're the best choice. I mean, it's like the old comparison with, if we're talking about relationships, this is what people would say would be proposing marriage before you go out on a first date, right? So you're already trying to
Mm.
say, choose us before you've had a chance to really build any rapport with that person. And that's the stuff that gets a little more challenging today.
No, totally. I think that a lot of people maybe rush into like, look what we can do and not think, oh, this person just doesn't need all of that information. Especially in this age where there's such an abundance of information and people are used to getting sold to and pushed to really take that step back, I think could really work wonders. And so I know you mentioned you have a specific framework, the STAMP framework. Could you maybe just speak a little bit about what that is and how that can help teams create more human driven content?
Sure, and I think it's important to point out that this framework's developed with about 20 years of experience in both media and content marketing, including nonprofit content, which is very human focused. And when I had some success working in that sector, and I got back into the for-profit sector, that's when I started to notice that what was changing was the very things that nonprofits have had to deal with all this time when it comes to that human
Mm,
connection. Now for profits are having to deal with it, and it's a much bigger change for
right.
them. So over the last 15 years, I've done a lot more extensive work on studying the communication elements and the humanization elements in content. It's basically a deeper understanding of staying audience focused. So I felt like that we were hearing all the buzzwords about why this is important, right? That, all the things talking about humanization, personalization, trust building, authenticity. And I feel like there were a lot of, brands or marketers that went, yes, I agree, but you're not giving me any way to do this. So the framework was developed to either help people create content that's human, has that human DNA up front, or taking existing content that might be hitting a wall and adding that human element into it to help results. So it's called STAMP. And the S is self awareness. We talked a little bit about that and some of those questions we're asking before we start the content process. Two-way communication, we've talked a little bit about that. It's evolving from that broadcasting and thinking more in a way that we're starting a conversation or we're talking more from a person to person two-way situation versus just yelling out to the masses. Adaptability, which is huge, and that's really related to company culture, making sure your company allows the people in your organization to monitor change and help content evolve with the times. Because as we know, I mean, what we talk about today might even have some different things tomorrow. So
Right.
it's important. And
Continues
and
to
we see a
change.
lot of stuff that's changing out there today. And some of the biggest experts that were telling us one thing years ago are now saying, no, it's not like that anymore. We're seeing that with SEO and adaptability and all these, or not adaptability, attribution and all these other areas that have changed the way we've had to approach things. Meaningful language, we just talked a little bit about that. That's the M in STAMP. So we're starting to talk more like people and less like marketers. And then finally, the P is predictive intelligence. And we've touched on that a little bit too, where we're starting to think, okay, what is our audience going through out there? And how can we consider that as we're developing content so that we don't overlook something or do something so fast that by the time we go out there, it's going to generate this response, this negative reaction. Assuming you get a reaction at all, they may just ignore it. And we
Mhm.
don't go, oh, if we stopped and thought about this, we should have known this wasn't going to work because they're going through this. So we're taking that extra time to think about their experience. And just from a human behavior standpoint or consumer behavior standpoint, what can we determine based on what we know about our audience and what we know about human beings who deal with advertising every day? What can we consider and think about and know about what they respond to and don't respond to, and then infuse that into our content development to increase our chances that we're going to generate the response we want and give them the content they want.
No, I think it's really cool that you've, yeah, developed such like a structured framework. It appeals to my systematic brain. And I think I think too, like even it kind of triggered my mind to think of like A/B testing, for instance, or like in emails, like rather than just pushing out content, can we like test it or send it to a subsection of our audience, see how they're going to respond to, like you mentioned, test that predictability of, okay, are we onto something here or not? Or looking at,
Yeah.
okay, what other content have we put out that's performed really well, like an outlier? And can we tap into those topics more, kind of thing, rather than just kind of creating content blindly? I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really the only way we can learn. And there's just so many tools and so many things we have now, and just the process has gotten so much more simplified that it doesn't even really cost us a whole lot to try some things. I mean, on social media, for example, if the idea is to generate conversation, which that should be the idea. You want to talk about one-way communication versus two? How many brands do you see out there just post stuff and it's like a rotating billboard and nobody says anything, nobody talks. It's just, one thing after another and that's it. And then you have those brands that post something and it's framed completely different and all these people are talking and they're responding and they're asking questions. It's like they've got their own little community in there. That's
Right.
what we want. And some people may go, well, how do I do that? And that obviously is going to be rooted in, well, what's your industry? What platform are you on? Things like that. But you still have the means to be able to say, well, let's try something. Maybe it's something as simple as doing that tactic, sometimes you'll see on Facebook where people will make it easy to respond. They'll say something like, okay, they'll put a graphic up and it says, the thing that's most challenging to my business today is blank. And if you're on the other side of that, I mean, it'll take you 2 seconds to go, well, it's podcasting or it's market share, and it's just really, really fast. It's easy to fill in that blank, and then you're learning a ton about what they're dealing with. So,
Right.
sometimes that testing might be as simple as, well, let's try this and see if people respond. And if it doesn't, it means we got to try something else.
No, I think that's cool. And like, what a great way to get to know your audience and get to know their pain points and where they're at and the things they're struggling with. So then not only can we create better content for them that they're interested in, but we can also build better services and products to help fill those needs, because we can have an idea in our mind about, oh, my customer struggles with this, or this is, this best service for them or product. But unless we actually know like what they're dealing with, we might be trying to sell them something that's not congruent with what they're dealing with. So I think that's a really cool way to not only get engagement, but to get to know the audience and better serve them.
Yeah, it's really easy to fall into that trap. I mean, as a creative, eventually I learned talking about stopping and asking myself a question. I mean, as a creative, I mean, there were plenty of times where I finally learned how to stop and ask myself, I might create something and think, yeah, this is really cool. And then there's a part of my brain that has to go, well, but you're not making it for you. So the question is, what is the audience going to think of this? And sometimes that might that might change what I do at that moment.
Right.
And I think businesses can fall into that same trap, and there's assumptions made there that we have to validate before we roll it out and tell everybody, you have to have this. Guy Kawasaki wrote a great book called Enchantment several years ago, and he tells a really interesting story about when they developed Macintosh computers and how when that thing was developed, they were all just like, this is great. People are going to want this. How could people not want this? They were all excited about it. And they went out and told everybody, you have to have this. And it turned out they went, no, we don't.
Mm,
And Guy said, we had to come to the realization that we were much more enchanted with our own thing, that we weren't paying enough of attention of how this was even going to fit into our the lives of our customers. And he actually said at one point in time something to the effect of, it's almost like we didn't want them to think, we wanted them to leave the thinking to us. And so we did all the thinking and told them why they needed it, and it didn't work out real well at first.
I can imagine. It's easy to happen. Like I think we all get caught up in that, myself included, of, oh, I'm really excited about this thing and it's gonna be great. And then yeah, if we have that disconnect between, oh, do people really want this? Or am I communicating it in a way that is evident that it's going to fix a core problem that they have? Or am I just really excited because it's a shiny thing that I created? And I think that's something that a lot of people would deal with. And so, one thing I wanted to ask was, do you use AI in your company, or do you have any tips for people who are using AI to help them sound more human, that they can sort of implement?
I mean, I use AI in a variety of ways. Um, and there are some times where I feel like if it's not getting me what I need, I go do something else. Um, but there are a lot of things I use AI for, but it's more on the improvement optimization side, or maybe even the planning side. I might say I'm going to develop this newsletter, but I want to focus on this. What should I highlight? Or can you find some resources that might help me make this point? And sometimes those resources are good, and sometimes I have to go, okay, don't give me Wikipedia, give me something of value. Or sometimes ChatGPT might be trying to please you so much and it starts to create quotes that align with you but aren't actually in the article. So you have to go, is this really in there? Or are you just trying to make this up? And it said, oh, yeah, it's true. It's not in there. So you got to make sure it's giving you the right stuff. Sometimes it's to organize like an outline or just conceptual things. As somebody who can be wordy, like I've been today, uh, I can I can sometimes say, okay, I know I could have said this better. And it might be just a line or two in a blog and go, can you just make this a little more concise? And it does usually. And I can tell it, do this, but maintain my tone and my style so it doesn't completely rewrite it and it's a disconnect from the rest of it. So I use it a lot for some research, some optimization. And from the human standpoint, I will tell you, I've seen a couple of instances where, as I mentioned before, sometimes you can try to write something you feel is going to resonate, but maybe you drop that into AI and go, does this do a good enough job if this is the reaction I'm trying to generate from the audience? And it might be able to go, well, if you're really trying to generate that, you may do this instead of that. And there was actually somebody on LinkedIn just here recently that said that it can even help you improve your emotional intelligence. Maybe you've got this thing and you say, okay, how good of a job does this do? And it says, well, you here, if you keep it written like this, it might trigger this negative reaction. And you left this out, which isn't really hitting this chord. So, I think I find more of it is helpful in the pre-planning stages, and then as you're humanizing and putting your stamp on it, it can improve some of the things you're doing by filling gaps, making improvements, and just working through you. Again, a partner, not necessarily doing all the work for me.
No, I totally agree. That's a big way that I use it too, is for, like if I'm stuck and I'm trying to brainstorm ideas, like thinking with it, like bouncing off each other. What do you think about this? Yeah, have I missed this? Am I coming at this from the right angle or the wrong angle? Like I think almost like a strategic partner, like someone that, or like a brainstorming buddy, someone to just be like, can you just review everything and help me with this? And even whether it gives you ideas or whether it just helps you think better, I think
Hmm.
both are beneficial. So I think that's a really cool way to use AI. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, there's even been a couple times where if all I want to do is brainstorm, Chat GPT, I don't know if you've tried this or not, but there's that function that will allow you to talk to it and it'll talk back to you. And
Yes.
it'll even let you choose what you want that voice to be. So,
Hmm.
if you
Yeah.
have a certain voice style, you want to hear something talk back to you. I've done that. It's been more of a brainstorming thing. Like I'll be talking conceptually about a podcast episode or something. So it's not something that where I have to have a lot written down, but it's just to generate ideas and it is a brainstorming session. That's kind of an interesting experience if you literally just want to sit down and brainstorm and write a couple things down on your own and you're not really doing the hardcore like editing thing. That's actually pretty effective if you can get the brainstorming going, and it's been helpful.
Yeah. No, I think it's really cool. I use the voice feature quite a lot, and even voice notes, because I find I just am faster and better at articulating stuff
Mm.
verbally than typing and typing. Sometimes if it's something short, I'll just type. But yeah, the voice feature is really cool.
Yeah, and to that point, I had a colleague do a post on LinkedIn not long ago that brought up this phone app called Voice Pal, and I'd never heard of that. And he said, what this does and what this helps me do is write content. Maybe it's long form content, like a blog post or a newsletter or something. And essentially, what it does is you take it, and for people like you and me, who I would both say I would much rather talk it out than write it out sometimes, that's what you do. You walk around and you talk out your thoughts, and it just transcribes it.
That's cool.
And then when you're done, it may ask some questions to fill in some gaps. It says, at this point, you were talking about this. Could you add a little more depth to this? Or could you add a little more detail to this? And then you can tell it, okay, turn this into a blog. Now, again, you don't want it to say, okay, good, that's a blog and call it good. You still want to tweak it and everything. Or you could just email that whole transcript and create all types of content. And since you spoke it, it's already kind of got that human conversational element to it. So
Hmm.
now you've already done a good chunk of that work, and now you're just fine tuning it for whatever content you want to use. And that's been very helpful. It also saves you some time.
Yeah, that's a really cool point, and something that I've been doing actually with the podcast is I automatically get the Zoom AI transcription, which has all of the talking points, and then I just drag and drop that into my custom GPT and it creates all my content for me. So it's like it's
There
cool,
you
and it
go.
has that like vocal conversational style because obviously it's a podcast, but and it's unique content, but it's still like just fast tracks that process. So that's yeah, another cool way to use it. So but I know
Yeah,
we're sort of over time. I don't
it's
want to keep
okay.
you too long, but
No, you're fine.
for people who want to connect with you and find out more, where can they find you online?
Well, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so I am there. And you'll be able to tell because it's stamp is mentioned in the headline uh, for my profile and humanizing content. And my website is scottmurrayonline.com. And those are the two primary places. And the book is on Amazon, and it's all the different ways people like to consume books. So you've got the ebook option, the paperback option, and I recorded the audio option as well. So it's a focus book, so it's like 168 pages, and then that means that the audiobook was just 4 hours. So
Yeah.
it sticks to what it's supposed to talk about, and then go off the rails and add a bunch of pages without needing to. So it's a very reader focused, like we've been talking about today.
No, I very much appreciate it because I know you sent it over. I had a bit of a listen before we jumped on the call, and I liked that it was 4 hours. And because I normally listen on double speed to a lot of content, so I was
Yes.
like, okay, now it's only 2 hours. So I was
That's
like, that's
right.
like a podcast, you know?
Yeah, that's
so,
true. That's a
so
great point.
I am like, yeah, I don't know. I have stopped reading a lot of nonfiction actually in the last sort of 6 to 12 months because I just was like, this book could be a blog post, you know? And so I
Mm,
really appreciate it when authors make it more succinct and just kind of, yeah, cover the need to know items. So I appreciate your style of writing.
I appreciate it. I think that's true across the board with content. We've seen so many
Yeah,
changes in podcasts and even YouTube videos where all the bells and whistles we used to add to things for flair and then introductions and stuff like that. Now people are saying, cut that stuff down because people want you to get to the point, get to what they
exactly.
want. Or as Wes Cow says, if you've got a story about, going camping and a bear attacks your campsite, then just get to the point where the bear attacks the camp. We don't need to know you got
Right.
up in the morning and what you had for breakfast and how you found this perfect spot. Just get to the cool stuff.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's why I don't do introductions on the podcast, and I don't do ads, and I don't do call to actions because I'm just like, if people want to connect, like they know how to find a website and a description, and I just want to get into the point. So yeah, no, I think
There you
that's
go.
cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for making the time and coming on the podcast. This has been really fun, and thank you everyone for listening.